Well, hello, everyone. Thank you again, Bruno, for bringing us together live in the first time in how many years? 2.5, 3? Right, 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5.
All right. So first question, if I missed it, I apologize. Who is not on 4.3 yet? A couple. All right, good. So, all right, then there's not a whole lot of redundancy yet in this slide deck. I got this from Paris 2 days ago, so I apologize for any clumsiness on my side. So let's talk Bob J. And these are kind of the 5 agenda points. So we'll start with what the kind of key pillars to 4.3 were generally. Then we'll focus a little bit on who's not heard of SAP Analytics Cloud thus far. Of course, just like HANA before it, right? HANA, SAC, right? So we'll talk about SAC and Bob J from an interoperability hybrid standpoint. Then we'll talk a little bit about what the latest as of last December, 4.3 Service Pack 2 brought into play. Then we'll start talking about Private Cloud Edition. Who's heard of that? Yeah. See, I'm too used to moving my hands with my virtual stuff. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about PCE, and then we'll get into kind of dates and roadmap stuff from there. Make sense? All right. So 4.3. Really kind of three pillars we were looking at, which was improved user experience, enhanced enterprise readiness, and hybrid connectivity. But the first point is the key, right? SAP is still going to continue to invest in Bob J. You know, no matter what the competitors tell you about Bob J's dead, no, it's not. Business Objects is very much alive, and we are still investing in it and still developing in it. As you can see, you know, we went GA with 4.3 around June of 2020. And then we followed up quickly in December of that year with a Service Pack 1 release. And we're now on a annual, pretty much, you know, every December, it says Q4 still, but every December you'll see a new Service Pack for 4.3. So from a user experience standpoint, and I noticed that Keith had some screenshots of 4.3 Webby up and you guys didn't balk at it. But so some key things here. Number one, a Fiori-like BI Launchpad. So more modern kind of user experience. And then we've also then updated for Webby big time, right? So one of the key things about the user experience to me is harmonization of user experience. So Webby 4.3 looks and feels a lot like SAP Analytics Cloud. Now, we've been touting harmonization as a goal for, gosh, Mr. Barge, as long as we've been working together, probably 15, 20 years, right? And so I think now we finally have achieved it with Webby 4.3 and SAC. It's the same kind of graphics engines, the same user experience. Obviously, there are still things that Webby can do that SAC does not, and vice versa, but it looks and feels the same. So if you're getting into a user change management perspective, for them to move or even to take certain use cases from Bob J to SAC is not going to be the heavy lift that it once was. It all looks and feels much more the same now. And then, of course, the other big thing with user experience is we're always trying to make sure that scheduling and publication, which still remain the sweet spot for Bob J as compared to, say, SAC, are still very user-friendly and modernized for you. Another key thing here is, anyone use BI workspaces? A couple of you, not many. I'm surprised with Barge, right? I love workspaces. Come on, guys. Well, anyway, they've been updated for 4.3 as well. Enterprise readiness, this is kind of the under the cover stuff that we always do, right? So we always want to make sure that we try and improve on the enhancements in terms of installation, security, all that good stuff. And of course, we always have Bruno and the guys from Wiiisdom to fill the cracks in for the things that we don't do ourselves, which there's still a lot of. Always have new data sources supported. Other credentialing things that we've done. And we've also tried to improve the audit capabilities and the administration tools that we have out of the box. And then there's hybrid. So we'll dive deeper into that. But the whole concept of hybrid is, you have how many years and millions of dollars expended and effort into business objects, right? We want to move you to the cloud SAP's going to the cloud. It's our big thing. Did anyone watch Sapphire at all last week? So if you were watching any of Sapphire, you know, it's sustainability and cloud. That's our big things, right? And so we want you to move to the cloud as much as possible. And we have our SAC offering for that. But we recognize, you know, to the point that we are continuing to invest in BobJ, we also recognize that we want to be able to reuse what you've done on the BobJ side as you move to the cloud with SAC. And so that's really what hybrid's all about. So first, you've got the ability to use universes as live data connection for SAC. So that means that the data stays in place on-prem under your span of control with your security needs, but the universe is truly then a metadata layer for use with SAC, right? So it's a great way for you to continue to allow that least common denominator user to use the business objects, the terms that they know, the universe that they understand, but use it in a new cloud tool that would allow them to do more than they can do with Webby right now. What if analysis using the planning features, predictive capabilities, throwing in some AI and ML that we have with the different smart features that we have in SAC. And that's really what this live connectivity lets you do. It's been available since 4.2 Service Pack 7, but it continues forward with 4.3. And then another key thing with 4.3 that applies to the hybrid aspect, but also just a cool thing for you to do within 4.3, Webby documents can now become data models. So I'll use some folks in the audience. David Barge, my friend, I know that he's a great Webby report developer. Ken Coleman, we all know, is a great universe guy, right? So I want to use Ken's universes in SAC. I also want to take some of the great work that Dave has done on Webby documents themselves, including custom measures on the Webby doc, things I've done at the Webby level as well, in addition to the universe. And I want to use that as a data model. Now that lets me do a couple things. Number one, if I want to reuse some of what Dave did, I can start with his Webby data model and build my own Webby document from that if I'm inside 4.3. So it's a great way for you to reuse things that people have done without having to say, you know, just copy a Webby doc, then delete all his visuals and redo my own visuals from there, right? It lets me use the data model essentially as kind of a poor man's universe, if you will. But the key thing then from an SAC perspective is that I can use those Webby data models as data sources for SAC as well. So really think there the notion of, okay, Dave has some great Webby documents. We've been using them in the agency for 10 years, but I want to take that and add my own visuals to it and also add some what if capability, right? I can do that very simply by using this live connectivity to the Webby data model. So that's really what this is all about, right? So that live, it used to be called the live universe connector. Now it's just a live data connector. And it lets you use universes and Webby data models in SAC. And we're going to continue to evolve that hybrid nature between the two, especially since we are recognizing that, you know, again, BobJ is not dead, right? All right. Okay. So Service Pack 2, again, is what was released in December. So Service Pack 1 was a great release, but there were still some things that we were missing in terms of 4.2 parity, right? So some of the key things there would be, and they were fixed in Service. Back, sorry. I should have used the microphone. So they were fixed though in Service Pack 2, right? Specifically, a lot of the reporting modes, like presentation mode, show and hide, do show and hide from a conditional standpoint, full screen mode. Then one of the bigger things that I always love, hyperlink, right? So hyperlink was there in the beginning, but there were a lot of options missing from it. The wizard wasn't as functional. So now with Service Pack 2, you're really back to normalcy with your hyperlinks now. Another key thing, who uses shared elements out there? I'm surprised not more of you doing that, but it's good stuff. So shared elements was missing from the first releases, and that's back as of Service Pack 2 as well. We've got more object enrichment capabilities that we have. Unified query panels. So regardless of what I am querying as a data source, I now have one query panel. So that's nice from a user change management perspective as well. better variable editors, better formula language, things like that. We also have some connectivity now to cloud and shared drives. So you'll see that Google Drive was one of the big things we brought out in Service Pack 2 for both input and output storage. And we're going to continue to advance that, as you'll see, with upcoming service packs after that. And then another big thing that we did, for those of you who are more graphically inclined, who still think that as great as Webby is, you still have people who like Tableau or Click or SAC from a visual standpoint. We do have some partners who help us with custom visuals that you can add into business objects, one of whom is Need for Viz. And as of Service Pack 2 and through the end of 2023, there's a freemium offering that we have. So when you install Service Pack 2, you get 7 free chart types from Need for Viz. And so that's a nice way for you to get started, to see what you can do with custom visualizations on top of Webby. More and more, and I know Bruno's had several webinars where more and more people are using, Webby as a dashboarding tool, right? Because it's still the Cadillac of BI tools, and literally all it's missing in some regards is visual things. And so if we can add those visual pieces, then we can have, the Cadillac tool building dashboarding capabilities. And that's really what this kind of gets to. Okay, then we have PCE. So again, who's heard of PCE? Not everyone. Okay, so this is great. So I can start from scratch with you guys, which is awesome. Business Objects Private Cloud Edition is it's our way forward to take you into the cloud by not losing the BobJ code line. Okay, so it's an offering that you'll hear a lot about from marketing and your account executives, but it's just BobJ managed by us. So you're not, don't get into the whole, well, what's PCE different than BobJ? It's BobJ. It's everything that you know and love today. It's just we're giving you a different paradigm in terms of a cloud decision. You can go public cloud fully with SAC, or you can use this private cloud edition that is managed by SAP to include NS2, right? Wave over there, Dave March. All right, so NS2, right? So for those of you in the federal space, it's perfectly great and useful for you to do this. It is our direction forward ultimately. Currently, as you'll see in the roadmap slide, as of the end of 2027, we will cease to maintain and support on-premise deployments. We want you to move to PCE. We want to be able to manage that environment for you going forward. So what is PCE? Well, it's nice. It's a single contract for you that's subscription-based, but it still includes concurrent and named user license notionally, right? But it's all of the infrastructure, it's all of the services, it's all of the operations of that server farm that we have, and the licenses, all in one single contract for you. We do have optional offerings. We've got, through partners like Wiiisdom and some other folks, we can help take you into the implementation process, the shifting and lifting from your on-prem into PCE and some of that kind of work. We have additional storage options that we can do. We have additional failover options we can provide. And we also have additional kind of application operations too. So if you're doing a lot of custom work, we can help you build that. If you've got a variety of things that you want to hook and connect to from an SAP landscape, we can help you make sure you manage all that. All of this is done with a cloud architect who is assigned to you. And so it's also, from a support standpoint, it's a single throat to choke for you guys. So it's nicer from that standpoint for those of you who always hate our woeful support, which I'll fall on the sword publicly for. It includes everything. So again, this sometimes gets lost in the wash. Even David and I were talking about this on the way in. Even internally, our own account executives think of BobJ PCE as some other thing than it really is. It's just business objects. So that means all of the components are included, right? We've got Crystal, we've got Webby, we've got Lumira, we've got A for Office, we've got A for OLAP right now, right? It's all there. In terms of support scope, I think this is the key thing, right? So you can see as identified in this box, the green line is what we handle from the service provider standpoint. And then the blue line is what you do. So even though we're managing the operations, right, you still get in the CMC, you still manage your universes, you still do kind of the plumbing piece that's important to the business and to the agency and to what you do. We just handle the hardware, all the care and feeding of that hardware, making sure everything's up and running, you know, as much as it can be. And so I think you can see then where some of the pricing advantages come into play, right? I'll come back to that in just a moment. So really the opportunity is all about you reducing cost and risk. So from a cost standpoint, we've seen that pretty much in most cases, until we get into like a really, really huge CPU type license situation, the PCE cost tends to be less than the combination of your current maintenance spend, your FTE spend on the people who are care and feeding for that object environment, and just the infrastructure itself, the machines. So it gives you an opportunity to also use our cloud extension policy to perhaps right-size your BobJ environment for just the tasks that you need it for. So you can reduce some of the population, and you can even reduce your maintenance spend and repurpose that for cloud purchasing for us. So there's a lot we can do there. And obviously the risk, we are guaranteeing you and we are maintaining that risk. The people who build PCE and maintain it are the ones who build the code, right? So it's the ones who know how to make BobJ work the best, I would say. And so really you can be assured that, you know, what you're getting from a BobJ implementation standpoint is probably, you know, better than what you've been experiencing yourselves. And then another key thing with PCE is we have another freemium with Wiiisdom for some 360 suite tools. I'll let Bruno talk more about it, but what did you say, Bruno? It was like 100 different?
We've included, sorry about the mic. So what we've included actually in the freemium is, so 360 is actually part of the freemium, and it's actually the solution that we'll be presenting afterwards. It's called 360 Bind, which is all about testing your BobJ reports, your Webby documents, your Crystal documents. And what we're doing there is we're able to, let's say you do an upgrade of business objects, we're able to compare your Webby documents between, let's say 4.2 and 4.3, or before going to PC, after going to PC, you want to make sure that your reports don't have any regression. So is the data still accurate? Well, you know, either you test it manually, which is really not fun, or you have a tool that will test things automatically, which is, you know, the modern way of doing things. So that's the type of thing that 360 Bind is going to do, and is going to ensure that your users trust the data they're getting out of their Webby, their Crystal documents. So that's what 360 Bind does well. And one key component as well is it also does performance testing. So it's going to compare before and how long the document runs and after. Because very often when you do upgrades, but in particular migrations, people think, well, I went to the cloud, is going to be faster. Well, the reality is it's not always that simple. And trust me, the first thing that your users will complain is going to see, well, is going to tell you, well, my Webby document used to run in 3 seconds. Now it runs in 5. The reality is nobody's got data. So it's the only way to really benchmark that is to use that type of tool. So that's really a key advantage to that.
And again, the kind of thing that we should do ourselves, but we tend not to. So we've got, you know, folks like Bruno to help fill in the real cracks that people need. And the other key thing, right? How many times have we said through, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I got a quick question. Can you go to the slide number 18, please?
Okay.
Oh, yes. So the PCE, I'm trying to relate what you were saying and then what Bruno was saying. So assuming that today we are in the on-premise environment where we basically looking at the overall system from the hardware, the networking, and then the business object system itself, right? So the user, when they have the problem, the issue with the performance issue, we can relate, okay, it could be probably network issue, probably hardware issue, or even software or the back in the database. So here, the PCE, is it the lift and shift than what we currently have on premise environment to the PCE, or are you guys going to do some magic in there that I think what Bruno was saying, that it's going to be very different, and then we're going to gain more performance gain on the PCE side? How are we going to compare these two, or it's going to be apple to apple, or they will be different?
I'd say it's apple to apple, realistically speaking, from a end user experience perspective, other than perhaps performance, which is then for those of us who, you working with your cloud advisor and architect and the folks from 360, we might be able to find and suss out other performance things that we want to improve, if that makes sense.
And I would say in general, we've actually been involved in a lot of PC migrations, like for example, with CB on Data and other partners. It's all a matter of planning. And we'll talk more in the next session about that. The key there is plan your migration properly, plan where data was going to be located. If you've got everything on PC in general, you're actually going to have something that will be with better performances. That's what we see commonly today. But the key there is just do the right planning. And whenever you do migration, these are IT migrations. So your business doesn't care, but trust me, if they hear that you did they did a migration or you did a migration, they're going to tell, you know what, it was slower. So here, the cool thing is you've got the tools to monitor, is this true or not? What are the differences? What are the differences as well in the scheduling? So that's a very good, you're going to get a lot of insights on that. So that's always the first part where people say the performances are not good. The second thing, well, I can't open. The third thing is, well, my data is wrong. And that's something that you want to avoid at all costs, because then people, they will lose trust. They will lose trust in your work. They will lose trust in business objects. They will lose trust in data. So that's why it's really critical to be testing. And there are always things that change behind the scene. And that's why, people do testing. So,
because they always blame the tool, right? Always.
They'll come and see you, Patrick.
Of course. But that's a great
As
point,
always.
though. So Bruno and I worked together on a big company called Breakthrough Beverage, and they just coalesced 9 different BobJ environments into one with PCE. And I think the key thing that Bruno just said is true, is planning, right? And we do have cloud architects on our side to help with that, but I think the partner community that knows BobJ is a great help with that as well. Plan this thing right, and it goes fairly, uncomplicated.
When you plan, do it right, but don't take forever, because at the end, a plan is only as good if you can use it and
Right.
if it happens on time. So just, and if you wait too long, you've got to do it a dirty way, and it's never a good thing. So
Plans are only in play until you meet the enemy, right?
yeah.
Hi, this is Praveen. I have a question to extend his question from the performance perspective. Say we are running into performance issues, and I'm just throwing an example. We have a node and it has a 8 CPUs and a 32 GB of RAM, and we determine on the on-premise side we need more performance from it, so we add CPUs. We request our server team or whoever maybe. When it comes to cloud, how do you manage? Does it involves cost, or how, you guys add it automatically, or we need to put a request to?
So in the planning phase too, we would want to do that up front with when we're sussing out the opportunity for you as well. So we have t-shirt sizes, and we have kind of our rules of thumb that we apply to those t-shirt sizes, but we have found, and Breakthrough is a great example of this, where the t-shirt size recommended simply by their user population was smaller than what we wanted to do, actually, because they had a lot of processing that they wanted to throw at it. And then we have we can add additional servers on if even that bumping you up the t-shirt sizes doesn't work. So we have options to help with that performance as well.
Okay, it means, say for example, we are in the middle of the year, the budgets. Normally in a company, if we need more CPU, we can add it. We have some allocated money for the company, and we don't need to go extra out of the budget. But when we are dealing with business objects or like a cloud partner, like if we need more resources, is it like involves more money, or how that is?
It might. That's
Okay.
kind of a maybe. It depends. So it depends on what your t-shirt sizing is. It depends on what you have. There may be some reallocation of the existing servers that you are subscribed to that you might be able to do. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of ways we can kind of, treat that as we need to. But a great example, so Breakthrough Beverage again, I just got an email from the AE yesterday. They want to add 2 servers just for Webby processing, right? And so that is a little bit more, but it's not, I mean, again, it's not the same, it's not a CapEx cost, right? It's an OpEx cost, and it's much lower, but it's wired into your subscription cost.
And to your point, and again, we'll touch that in the next presentation as well. It's about planning and doing the assessment. So we'll spend some time going through the assessment with JF on the next session. And the key there is to understand what you have, because realistically, if you ask people, and I could do it here, I pretty much know the answer, but exactly how many documents you have, how many users are really connecting, what's the usage of all your documents? Most people, they just don't know, because simply that information is not available out of the box, which is very tricky. And because of that, it makes it very difficult to assess. So when it comes to performances, you've got ways to assess what the performances are today. Then you can set some expectations for tomorrow. However, instead of only going the route of saying, hey, I'm going to get some more servers, et cetera, I think something that Jeff was presenting earlier is there are some things that you can do today where you do some cleanup, you do some stripping, where over the years, people have been adding, and things are not necessarily used and they're not very efficient. We've seen that, people will just do plain dirty developments and just take what is existing, add on the top, and they don't have the history. They don't care, how well it works. Here, you're able to get some metadata, understand if it's really used or not, check the lineage and all these things to help you to improve. But it's not an easy work. It's something you have to accept that you have to go in. So it's not going to happen by magic, but that's, that's the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah, the
And
infamous,
it's, it's free to do. It's just, it takes some time. So that's not free, but that's, it's part of the work. So.
And of course, the infamous, I took Ken's report and I made 50 versions of it with 50 filters because I couldn't use the input control box, right? That kind of stuff. And, how many years have we been saying to you guys, every time you move from a major point to a major point release, you should do this kind of assessment? Well, I think PCE really makes you really, really need to do that. And we help force you with that, with some of the premium stuff. All right, cool. All right. So PCE, right? We've talked about hybrid. We've
just hold on, Patrick, another question.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm sorry.
What's the future? Like
We'll get there.
Oh,
thank you for thinking.
You've got a crystal ball?
You're Nostradamus. Nostradamus is asking the question. Right, it's good. All right, so
he's got the answer.
Right, so we're going to start with where we're going with Service Pack 3. Then we'll get into timelines and the future. Okay. So first up, Service Pack 3. It's a bit of an eye chart, so I won't read it out to you, but a couple of key things. We're continuing to improve hyperlinks. There's going to be a new data manager feature within Service Pack 3 that's going to be a better way for the end user community to do join concepts with the data, right? So I think, for those of you who've tried to do on report data blending, it's kind of painful and woeful at times, right? So I think this data manager is going to help with that. We're continuing to do more and more with cloud platforms, especially as we try to move to PCE more. We want to do, number one, as I mentioned, Google Drive and Service Pack 2, but we're going to then open it up to more things like OneDrive, SharePoint, others for input and outputs, but then also start to use more of the cloud databases as native things we can use the universe on top of. So Azure, Corona or Cosmos, other things we get Amazon all the time. We get the question on. And we have ways to do it now, but now we're going to have more efficiently drivers that go straight at that cloud data type. And then here are some other kind of capabilities. And we're providing the slides, right, Bruno? Yeah, so you guys will be able to.
Yes, all the slides will be available.
So you can
after,
read through
so
the
don't
word
worry.
salad of these things. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We can talk about it, because this is the perfect time, right? This is now when this is the first list I've seen from Paris on what will be in Service Pack 3. So we still have a brief amount of time to help influence that. But I think another key thing is from the user enhancements, right? For the end users, we are really, for the first time, I would say in a long time, we really are listening to you, the customer. So if there are enhancements and things that you want to see in the user experience, you know, we put them into the ideas place, or whatever it's called now, I forget. And we voted up, and we actually are listening to that as what should we do to the UI. So if we have anything that you are really clamoring for, reach out to me. We'll get it up to Paris's attention. Okay, and then here's the future, Nostradamus. All right, so for those of you on 4.2, I hope you know that your mainstream support ends at the end of this year. So you should be looking at moving to 4.3 or PCE or both. Okay. And so since we started, everything in SAP is on 7-year cycles. So since 4.3 debuted in 2020, it's alive for 7 years for mainstream support. And that is still the case here. We will move at 2027 into priority 1 support, but you know, that's not really not where you necessarily want to be. So you see this new thing on there called BobJ BI 2024. So Dave was asking me, is there going to be a 5.0? Well, we may not call it 5.0. We may call it 2024, kind of like we did with Classic Crystal. We're not, that's still kind of TBD, but just know that at that point, whether we allow you to deploy it on-prem or not, the current statement is that no, at that point, you need to move to PCE. But the key message I hope you're seeing here is that the BobJ code line lives on after 2027. So even though we're saying we're not going to support on-premise installations of BobJ, we're still supporting BobJ through the PCE licensing mechanism. Does that make sense? Does anyone think BobJ is dead? Does anyone think BobJ dies in 2027? All right, good. Whew, I've done my job then. That's great. Okay. A couple of things will happen in 2027 though, right? Because we have some end of life things happening. So Lumira, really 2024 kind of Lumira dies. What's the go-to solution after that? SAC, right? That's really what we've been, SAC's paradigm started really with that whole Lumira, Tableau, Click, that agile visualization perspective is where you start from. So that's what SAC is built for. And then it has the additional features of planning and predictive and AI and ML. Who used Explorer in the past? A bunch of you, right? So for those of you who miss Explorer, the data exploration capability within SAC is even better than Explorer was as a standalone tool. So like that before it, analysis for OLAP will go into kind of the SAC bucket as well, right? Say A for Office still lives on, but A for OLAP, which we don't have as nearly as many users of, that kind of flows into the SAC crowd as well. Crystal reports for enterprise. We never really saw, I'd say for those of you who are old enough to remember the Brady Bunch, it always felt like the Cousin Oliver of Crystal, right? So we're getting rid of Cousin Oliver and we're sticking with Crystal Classic, which should make my friend David Barge happy as well, right? He came from that side of the house. Live Office. So again, a lot of you use Live Office. Corporate wise, I think you've seen we've been moving more towards analysis for Office anyway, but we've also done a lot in terms of adding capabilities from a OData perspective and from a RESTful web services perspective to kind of help mitigate the loss of Live Office in 2027. And then of course, this is the moment where UNV dies. So I know a lot of you continually ask this question when we have these webinars, you know, when do I have to try and look into UNXs? I'd say, you know, as we've said all along, start doing it now, but 2027 is your firm line in the sand for the death of UNV. Yes. Desktop's still there. So rich client is still a part of 4.3. In fact, if anything, it's more at parity with Webby on browser. So for those who do want to use, the desktop rich client version, it looks and feels exactly like the browser version now.
Question, sorry.
Yes.
I have a question. Who still uses UNV?
I knew there'd be more.
So, yeah, be honest, be honest. So pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
So no surprise anyway. So
yeah.
that was our guess.
I mean, to me, the key message about PCE is that it's managed by us. And, you're still using all of the BobJ features now. So here's that, right? So our rationalization now on the left is what you have the access to. On the right is where we go after 2027. It's really going to be down to Webby and Crystal Classic and A4O that we are managed and presenting and managing for you operationally. Yes, sir. So since SAC was authored in, it was cloud authored for cloud use, right? It's a totally different engine. So the question was for those out there, do we see BobJ and SAC coalescing more? And I'd say really we're going to continue to improve that hybrid interactivity, because really there's no way for us to say, take a Webby document and migrate that into an SAC story. The engines are still, they're just totally different ways that they handle data and other things. But the ability for you to still use your content. And by the way, it's not just Webby documents and universes. If you've done anything custom calculation wise on a Crystal report, that can be a data model source for SAC as well. So you've got interactivity through all of these different capabilities. And of course, analysis for Office is really just an Excel front end to your data now. There's a similar plugin for SAC, as well as analysis for Office being able to access SAC models as well. So I'd say no from the kind of technically melding together, but yes from the interactivity perspective, if that makes sense. All right. Any other questions like that? Yes. Ken Coleman.
I think, I really believe that people who are BobJ users, it's like a no-brainer to use SAC in a hybrid environment. It's just fantastic. But as far as the roadmap, when you're acquiring data from a universe, which for those who don't know, that means like importing your data, as opposed to a live query. The live query doesn't have the functionality now as the query. Is that part of your roadmap to kind of get the live query up to the same functionality that acquiring data does? Because right now there's that gap.
Absolutely. So I'd say, and that's across the board. So not just from the live connection standpoint with the universes and Webby data models. We ultimately want to get to the point where everything in SAC can be done through live connections.